All right, so Dad,
Yeah.
how you doing?
I'm great, Eli.
I felt like, I really want to have something that was going to be like a nice, calm space for us to talk, and here we are, right? It's been, a long time coming for us to do this. To start off, I feel like over the years, because we always talk on the phone, we've had these long conversations.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Oh, I love our conversations, though, too.
Yeah, we talk for hours.
Oh, yeah.
About music and everything like that. But to start off, I feel like my audience, they've never really gotten to know you, so this is your opportunity. So why don't you just let everybody know who you are? And
Well, I'm originally from Compton, California. That's really where I was born at. And then after that, I lived a lot in West Los Angeles, over in that area, close to, that was like maybe over in the Olympic area, Wilshire area, back in the 70s. We moved over there from Compton. So that's where I spent probably most of my years, where I started developing opinions and stuff like that, about different things. But
yeah, you grew up in the 70s, right?
oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Right.
But I was actually born in Compton, California.
Yeah. What year?
1952.
Right.
August 1952.
And you were in the music scene during what I would say is probably the heydays of psychedelic rock, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Things like that.
Jimi Hendrix, things like that. Sly and the Family Stone. Who else? Buddy Miles back in those days. Who else? Led Zeppelin. All of these guys came out back in the 70s, and so I was kind of like influenced on that too. Yeah.
Well, let's take it a step back for a second. So you were born in the 50s in Compton. So you're a California native.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. Let's kind of go a little bit from the beginning.
Well, my earliest days that I can remember was in Compton, California. That's where I grew up as a child, I guess I would say, until probably about actually we lived over there until I was about 13 or 14 years old. That's when we moved from there over to West Los Angeles. But most of my really, really early memories were from Compton, in that area, Compton, California. That's where, my brother and my sister and my mother, that's where she pretty much raised us as kids, was in Compton, California.
Right.
So, I remember ripping and running up and down the streets, crazy. No shoes on, ripping and running at night and just crazy. That's back when, kids had a completely different life back then.
Compton was different too, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Compton was really more like a farm community back then, yeah. And, we'd be out until 9, 10 o'clock at night, and, it was no big deal. You'd hear your parents calling you in, Danny, Nana, come in, and so we'd be playing all night and all day long, really pretty sometimes. Fun for us would be like playing with a stick,
Yeah, no internet.
No, we had none of those things,
Yeah.
no. So it was...
No VCR, it was just a different time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Much different time. But, it was more community involvement, with the families, there was definitely more community involvement, but it was just a different time. Music was different, everything was different. But yeah, that's where my really youngest years I can remember would be in Compton, California, until probably about 13 years old.
And we come from a family of musicians.
Oh, yeah.
And entertainers in general.
Oh, yeah.
So do you want to dive into that, with grandma, things like that? She was a singer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My mother, she was an entertainer. She sang.
Uncle Bus was in the Ink Spots.
Yeah, he was in. It's all of us were all singers, pretty much. Most of them were anyway. But I remember, us as kids, we'd be over to my uncle's house, and he would have this big, huge tape recorder, and we'd be sitting on couches on one side of the living room, and the group would be in there practicing all night long, and I hear them, shoo-doo-doo-be-doo, all of these different singers and their bands, their groups. So it was fun. I mean, we all got a taste of that type of life, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, also there was the carousels, and that was another thing that people don't know about.
The carousels.
Our family had like the carousels, right?
That was the name of one of their groups. Yeah. They did all kind of songs. Matter of fact, they were never really that successful with it, but they definitely worked at it. I mean, my brother would write songs. My mother wrote songs, and my uncle wrote songs. Matter of fact, my brother had a song, I want to take you to a drive-in movie. Baby, it's gonna be so groovy. Yeah. When I take you to a drive-in movie.
Yeah, that's that drive-in movie. It's a doo-wop.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people don't know that, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my brother, he was kind of influenced from the doo-wop era, though, too, yeah.
Going into outside of that, because I'm also thinking about, like, in our family, Aunt Pearl, she married Lloyd Glenn, right?
My Aunt Pearl, no. She actually married my uncle.
Right.
Yeah, Uncle Bus, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, Lloyd Glenn, he was a pretty famous musician, but he married my auntie's sister.
Got it.
Violet.
Violet. So she married. Okay, got you.
Yeah, so she married Lloyd Glenn.
Auntie Violet married
Lloyd Glenn. Yeah,
got it.
Yeah, and he was, he was a pretty famous guy. I mean, heck,
yeah.
He did.
He's got a Wikipedia page. Lloyd Glenn's a big deal.
I know. Yeah.
And what was that like for you? Like, because you've been to his house, right?
Oh, yeah. I remember being a kid, we would go to his house because he lived in West Los Angeles. And back at that time, there was a lot of really wealthy African-American people that lived in that area. I mean, they had like mansions, and he had a huge house. I remember going over there, and we could get lost in his house. It was so huge and so big.
Yeah.
And he'd be in there playing the organ, and we'd be in there playing the organ, listening to him. But yeah, he was a very, very interesting person. Very, very interesting, Uncle Lloyd Glenn.
You really came from black music.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like I was definitely influenced by a lot of that stuff. Like, I come from black music.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people be thinking I'm like Dominican or something. I'd be feeling like they'd be trying to throw that not like us thing at me. I'm like, no. I'm definitely of the culture.
Oh, no.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, they'd be like, I'd be like, nah, like.
No.
Like, I'm really in black culture.
No, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And of course, too, you listen to all kind of music because I listen to all kind of music, too.
Right.
You know that. But no, definitely you were influenced by African-American music, African-American culture, period.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
We also have my cousin, right, Bobby Wade Jr., who is your cousin Bobby's son, right? And he played for the NFL, right? So shout out to Bobby, because I've been meaning, I haven't seen him in years, but like I've been meaning to try to get in touch with him. I know he's like a coach right now for Arizona State University for college football. And what about you growing up like in Compton as a kid? Like what drew you to music early on?
Probably listening to my mother and, my brother and my uncle, the music that they listened to, I was influenced by listening to Jackie Wilson, who else? Oh my goodness, Sam Cooke, all of these different people, Smokey,
James Brown, right?
Yeah, James Brown. Oh yeah. Matter of fact, I can remember going to James Brown concerts when I was a kid. So I was pretty much influenced by pretty much all of that music when I was a kid, very, very young. I think I probably started focusing and listening to music a little bit more after the doo-wop era. I'm probably more influenced by that type of music. That really, I think, probably really went into the heart of me, basically. But I remember, we'd be listening to people like Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, Me and my friends for hours relentlessly. We'd be sitting up, on top of our house. I had friends all up and down the streets, and we had never heard stuff like that before. So I was really influenced by that, yeah.
That was when you also had like your own bands you were in, right?
I had a band that we performed. We performed quite a bit in some of the clubs in Hollywood and some of the bars in Hollywood, different places like that.
Do you remember the names of those bands you were in?
Yeah. Electric Room, Electric Light, I think Limited, all of these different names we used. I think we had like maybe 3 or 4 different names.
You're definitely an LA kid, I could tell.
Oh, yeah.
Like your personality and everything like that.
Can you tell?
Yeah.
Why do you say that, though?
I just feel like that, like being in LA in the 70s, where there was a lot of celebrities coming through in the Hollywood area, I feel like you've been like exposed to a lot of that stuff. And it permeates into your personality, right? Like your style of clothing and stuff like that. So you never thought, like with your friends, were you guys just jamming? You never thought to get signed? It was just for the love of music. You just wanted to play,
Oh, yeah, no, and I think that really back then I just really, I always loved music. Always. I mean, because of course I come from music, but I think that I just really wasn't that focused on it for some reason, because I had so many other things going on too around me. But if I had it to do all over again, I would have definitely stayed a lot more focused. Yeah.
Everything happens for a reason. But I would say, because I've sampled a lot of your work, I feel like you should do a show or two, playing the guitar. I know you still love singing. It's in you.
Oh, yeah. I love to sing, yeah. Absolutely.
Who knows, I might do like a big show and then I'll trick you. You're going backstage. And I'm like, all right, Dad, you ready to go? Let's put you in front of 50,000 people.
I can imagine you doing that too.
I would absolutely do that to you.
Yeah, that would be an experience. Yeah, I'd love to do that. Yeah.
Okay, getting into the whole, like, in the 80s, how your music taste expanded, and into the 90s when you had me in 93, what would you say would be the artist that you would play in the house?
In the 80s?
In the 90s.
In the 90s?
Yeah, when I was young.
Oh, heck, I listened to, Maxwell. I love Maxwell. Yeah.
Maxwell was amazing.
Oh, yeah, I loved him.
Very underrated.
I would say that, too.
I feel like you liked him more because D'Angelo was in his time, too. I feel like you liked him more than D'Angelo, right?
Yeah. I also listened to a lot of Mint Condition.
Yeah.
Pretty Brown Eyes.
I love that song, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I listened to them. I listened to... I was listening also, too, to Stevie, too. And, of course, that was a different time for Stevie.
Right.
Yeah, he got, that girl thinks that she's so bad.
That is an amazing song. Tony?
Oh, yeah. Tony, too. Oh, yeah, I love that. You listen to that stuff, too.
Growing up, It
never rains in Southern California.
Any black kid in the 90s, early 2000s, we had, like, that Sony system, remember?
Oh, yeah.
With the multi-CD holder and stuff.
Oh, yeah. You remember all that stuff, huh?
I do remember it.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's just funny how things turned out, right?
Oh, like, yeah.
Where it's like, because I remember you used to collect all those CDs in there.
And,
right. And we used to, because you bought, like, everything but the girl, that CD.
Oh,
that
yeah.
band. We had this world music. I forgot the name of it, but it was like a bossa nova album. I can't even remember the lyrics, but I've grown up listening to the music that you put me on, and even with Grandma, I kind of want to go back to that real quick. Grandma was I feel like she had a lot of potential when I'd hear her records, which are still on YouTube. People. They're fans of the carousels that I put her records on. I bet you there's records she probably forgot to tell you that might exist.
Can you
under a
imagine
pseudonym.
that? They're still listening to that?
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, people know about our records.
Oh man, and that was like way back in the carousels. Wow.
Well, I feel like there's records that she might have did under another name. She might have forgotten to tell you. You know, Grandma was definitely special, though. I feel like you would say she was an interesting woman, right? You would.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
A black woman in the 40s and the 50s.
I know.
In the 60s.
I know.
So talk about that for a minute. Like, what are your memories of Grandma? Like, she came from where and like.
Oh, she came from Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
And my mother moved around a lot though too. Mm-hmm. But she came from there. She lived in Casper, Wyoming. And I think that's probably where I also heard a lot of country western songs too, because the Midwest.
Yeah, the Midwest music. Yeah, her roots are there.
Yeah. She listened to a lot of country western.
We're country people.
That's true. That's true.
For real.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're country people.
Yeah.
And she's Native American, right?
Yeah. She was, a mixture of Blackfoot. She was also. Let's see, Blackfoot and, of course, African American. And, I think there's probably a little bit of Hispanic in there, too, because I know she did live in Mexico for a while, which was kind of weird, but kind of strange. I never understood that. But, no, she sang a lot. And like you say, back in the 40s and the 50s, she traveled all around singing with big bands because that was the thing back then. But
did she move to California to pursue a music career?
She did. She moved to California in the 50s.
And she had you with Grandpa, but they broke up.
Yeah.
So Grandpa Andrew, we don't know too much about him because he wasn't really in your life, right?
Yeah.
So at that time... since it was mainly like Grandma raising you and Uncle Tootie and Auntie Netta, it was just you three and her.
Right.
I got to say, that's impressive,
Yeah.
I have so much respect for Grandma, being a black woman at that time, to be able to maneuver through trying to have a music career, raising your kids. That's not easy.
Oh, heck no. And back then, too, it was really hard because there was very few jobs for African-American people. And, of course, for an African-American woman,
right,
there was even less jobs,
right.
To be honest with you. But she managed to do it, And I know that I can remember, it was could be a pretty desperate situation at times coming up. I remember that, but she managed to raise us.
You guys had financial hardships, right?
Oh man, yeah. Are you kidding me? Oh yeah. I remember, my mother would, man. It was really. I remember all of the government cheese and all of that stuff. All of the cheese. We ate so much cheese. Heck, I remember, man. Heck. We would go out to Long Beach back in those days, and they would have boats coming in where they would bring in all of the tuna and all of the fish and stuff like that. And I remember standing up on the docks back in the 50s, and those boats would be coming in, and it was crazy. I remember standing out there freezing with nothing on but just a shirt, tennis shoes, no socks. And when they would come in, they would have, food fish that they just didn't use, and they would give them away to different people that would be standing out there waiting to get the fish. So I remember we'd be out there waiting to get the fish from the fishermen. And, and sometimes that's all we would have. So we would go home and make fish stew. It was really tough back then. It was so tough. It was crazy. Really. I remember ripping and running up and down the streets with no shoes on back in those days, asking people, can I come in and get all of your bottles, please? And because I was always out to try to figure out a way to make money. It was...
You're hustling.
Oh, man, I was a hustler. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember at night it would be like 12 midnight, and I'd be running through the streets with no shoes on. It would be 12 midnight. I'd be running all across town because you did not want to stop, especially being at 6 and 7 years old, because there were some really crazy people around there too back at that time.
A lot of drunks.
Oh, man.
I remember you used to tell me about how you would sell pictures.
Oh, wow, yeah. I remember, I think I was probably about 20, and there was a place that I worked for in Hollywood. It was called Antone's of Hollywood.
Oh,
we used to sell pictures. We would go up and down the street selling family portraits. It would be like 8x10s, and it was quite an experience. I mean, we'd have like maybe 5 or maybe 10 or 15 people. We'd be going out into different areas. We'd get out, we'd go and talk to people door to door selling these pictures. And I remember this guy, Tony Palumbo, he drove the van, and it was just a bunch of characters on there, guys that wanted to be actors and everything. I mean, it was something. We'd go down the street, and we had this thing that we would say, if you can show me like a box top off of, say, Tide washing powder, we would give you a free 8x color portrait of your family. And I remember the wives, they would go run into the kitchen and they'd bring out this box top off of Tide. And if they brought it to us, if they showed it to us, we'd give them a free 8x10 color portrait. And, you know, it was a heck of a time. I remember that, yeah.
And you were saying this was in your 20s.
It was back in the 70s. I worked for this company called Jeans West. We used to sell jeans.
And you were the manager, I think, right?
I was a manager of a store.
You became the manager.
Downtown Los Angeles, yeah.
In your 20s?
Yeah, in my 20s, yeah, I remember that. And I remember it was downtown L.A. After that, I had my own store over in Westwood, California.
And Westwood's nice.
Oh, yeah, it was nice back then, yeah.
That was bougie.
Yeah, it was nice back then.
You were not like them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember that, yeah. Yeah, it was kind of like a boutique, I guess you would say, yeah. Because, you know, I remember I used to come in there every day, and I would actually change clothes when I would come in, and I'd put on a new outfit every day. And it was funny, I would kind of damage some of the clothes that I'd be wearing, damage them out, and then go just grab stuff off of the shelf, off of the racks and stuff, and dress up every day. And yeah, it was an experience. I remember that.
Celebrities used to come through, right?
I remember we had celebrities coming through, yeah. I remember that. I remember Richard Pryor came through. He would come through the store buying jeans, yeah. I remember Johnny Mathis. He would come through sometimes and buy the jeans. And I remember we would just kind of sit out in front of the store, and it was kind of crazy. We did some really crazy things, really.
Wow.
I remember really crazy. Yeah, I probably shouldn't even mention anything about the smoking and all of that.
No, it's fine. Like, you know, you're on my platform. You can say whatever you want.
But I remember it was crazy. I remember, you know, when we worked downtown L.A.
Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah. Now, I remember when we worked in downtown Los Angeles, when I managed that store, it was completely different.
Right.
I moved to Beverly Hills before I moved to Westwood and ran my own boutique clothing store.
Right.
But I remember in Hollywood, it was so crazy. Over there, you could just sit out in front of the store and we would be smoking, you know. And I remember I'd be like, you guys are crazy. You can't just sit out in front of the store and smoke. And we did it. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy. We had like a big, huge warehouse in the back of the store, and it'd just be jeans everywhere. Mm-hmm. And it was a big party. Because back then, I mean, everybody was partying, though, too. I remember, we'd have beer in the store, we'd have wine, and, you know, all of the entertainers would come in, and we'd offer them beer and wine, and we were supposed to be working, and you really didn't, when it came to working with them, you didn't sell anything to them. You just let them come in and do whatever they wanted to do. They had all the money.
And Richard Pryor, what would you say his personality was like? He was quiet?
Very, very quiet.
Yeah.
Very quiet. And you would think he would be more like he really was, on stage.
His persona, right?
Oh, yeah. No. He was very, very quiet. And, he would just come in and he would just look and, and he would just actually just point to things and we would go get them. He'd point to jeans, a pair of pants, a shirt or whatever, and we just go grab it and just put it in our arm. By the time he got ready to leave out, we'd have an arm full of clothes. And he was very, very quiet, though. Very quiet, yeah.
You had a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. In your life.
Yeah. Yeah, and being a salesman,
sure.
I think that's, that happens.
Well, I think it's just your charm and you're a good speaker, too. Mm-hmm. You're really good at talking. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, especially when you're in your element, like when you know what you're talking about, you're really sociable with people, And I would say, like, even, like, it doesn't surprise me, you being a salesman. So you met my mother at what year? What was that?
I met your mother in 1991.
91.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, because shortly after that, you were born in 93.
Right, in 93.
But yeah, I think it was like 91 I met her.
You guys got married in the same year, or was it?
We got married, I think it was probably like in 92.
92.
Yeah, the end part of 92. But it was really funny. Yeah, I was selling loans back at that time. I remember I was selling loans for HFC. Your mother called over there to the place where I worked at. She wanted to get a loan. And what was really so funny, I remember this lady came over to me and she said, Danny, could you come over here and talk to this lady on the phone? I think she's from Mexico or something like that. And it was so funny. I went over here and I grabbed the phone and I started talking to this lady and she's like, she was trying to explain to me that she wanted a loan. I said, this lady is not from Mexico. She's from the Philippines. So really funny how I met her. But that was her sister. Auntie.
My Auntie Virginia?
Yeah, she called the store first. And then she said, I got somebody I want you to talk to. And that's when she put your mother on the phone.
And then that's when, okay.
Yeah,
so how'd you guys end up meeting? Was it like?
Well, because they, it was funny. Your auntie, she said, I want you to come over after we get the loan because we like to have barbecues. So I went over to their house in Moreno Valley. They had the barbecues and that's how I met your mother. I remember that. Yeah. She was very, very quiet and everything.
Yeah. So, for the people that are watching this, it is almost like, I would say, prophetic for me to be in this business of entertainment because her family is more business oriented, whereas yours is more entertainment oriented.
Absolutely.
Right? As we mentioned with like Uncle Bus and Grandma, you, Uncle Tootie, and et cetera. When I was young in the 90s, what would you say was your first impression of like seeing me develop as a person? Like, what would you say characteristics about me?
Oh, you were very competitive. Mm-hmm. Very, very competitive. You were very driven, even at a young age.
Yeah.
And you always knew what you wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Always.
Stood on business.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I remember what was so funny when you were growing up, I remember you would always see yourself as being older than what you were. Because I remember they had, for instance, they would have this, it was like this game that you guys used to play. You remember where the dancing game?
Oh, the Dance Dance Revolution. Yeah. I used to play a lot.
And I remember, man, you'd be like 5 years old and you'd be on there working that doggone game.
I used to do those contests, remember, against people? Like grown people.
I remember
adults.
That was crazy.
Smash Bros. DDR,
I remember, yeah, and you'd be like a little bitty guy and all of these big kids, teenager kids, they'd be on there and you'd be competing with them. Those little legs would be working, boy. Yeah. And it was so funny, but you had all kind of confidence. You knew that you were going to win.
Didn't a teacher of mine tell you I was going to be not having a normal job? She passed away, Mrs. Walker.
Yeah, I remember that too.
Rest in peace to Miss Walker.
I remember.
What did she tell you?
She told me, she said, She said, I could never imagine Elijvh working on any job that's mundane. I remember she said that. She said,
She called it.
She said, yeah.
She really called it.
Yeah. She said, I can never imagine him working on in a mundane business.
Yeah.
Anytime, any area that's mundane, he's never going to want to do that, And she said that he's going to always want to do whatever he wants to do, and he's really focused. And you were, for a young person, you were very, very focused.
And I would say, because, man, as a kid, I used to see you because you built like a makeshift music studio, which is where I was able to get some of those tapes where I sampled you for some of my songs today. But I remember I used to watch you as a kid play music in the studio. You would record your own music. And you do playbacks. You had like an 8-track that you got from Guitar Center, and I'd watch you record music all the time. Now, granted, I didn't have the music bug until I got a little older as a teenager, because I would see my brother Daryl, where he would play like hip hop records. So that was the time I would watch, because he had like the the Missy Elliott CDs and Linkin Park and Jay-Z and stuff like that, Kanye West. And that really got me into wanting to listen to more music. And then with you recording in your studio, I didn't really understand the intricacies of recording music professionally. Growing up, I thought I'd be like a game developer or a game designer.
When did you know that you wanted to make music on your own?
It was just because, again, I really felt the music bug from being around a lot of people that were really into music, and I felt like I had that drive and curiosity to want to get into music production. And then I was influenced by people like, Me Gusta, if you remember them.
I remember that.
So there was like Dominic and Sean. And then I would listen to like a lot of independent, like indie artists, and I was really into Kanye West. I remember I wanted to figure out how he made Runaway. How those drums sound like that. Like, how's he, and he's like rapping and singing, and then Pusha T. I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, it was like cool. Like, I was like, how does he do these things? So I would say, at that time, because growing up, I was in that subculture, and I was around. Also being around a lot of creatives, which is when I met like Michael Tukes, and then I started meeting all these other creatives, and I was around this kid named Nico, if you remember him.
Oh yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
And Nico used to take me to LA, and I met all these like, my era celebrities, right? At that time, going through like all those places where all the skate stores and everything were, you know what I'm saying? Like Supreme and stuff like that. I was introduced to that through Nico, and that stayed with me for the rest of my life, I met everybody Supreme, and then I met everyone at Huff.
I remember you were into all of that, yeah.
Yeah, so I was one of those dirty skate kids, I was... And that was another thing too. I was into skateboarding, if you remember that.
Oh my God, I remember that. Yeah,
that was like my teenage years, where it was like music and skateboarding.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I remember that. Yeah,
and I was really into it. The Nike SBs.
Yeah,
but I was really into the subculture basically. And then that's when I stuck with the music, because I wasn't getting injured making music compared to skateboarding.
Yeah,
right. Because I was getting some injuries.
Right, I remember that. Yeah.
So like fast forward to now, and I've developed a brand, and I've kept our legacy alive with the music, because I fell really in love and headstrong into it. You've seen the evolution of where I was going with the music stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
And
absolutely.
do you remember the early days of it when I was? I went under another pseudonym. I was Filthy Paw. If you remember that.
My God, yeah, I remember that. Filthy Paw, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
you remember that? I was making beats, and
I thought you were going to stick with that forever.
No, that was gonna. I was just shy at the time. I didn't really felt like I could put my voice on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was. Oh my God, that was cringe.
And you were Filthy Paw for a long time too.
I was, and it's just funny because when I went to Elijvh, and then I had to misspell it because nobody could find me under Elijvh, and I couldn't come up with a gimmick. It's just, this has been a long journey. Funny thing too, because when you think about it, like when I went from Filthy Paw transitioning into my real name, it's funny because a lot of people think like I was like a big Donald Glover fan, but I wasn't initially, right? Like I would, You know,
yeah.
I wasn't really a big fan of him. It took time.
No, I remember at first. I remember you used to make jokes about his music. I remember you as a kid.
I would tell him this. I doubt he would care.
I remember you used to make jokes about it. Yeah, and I remember you. But I remember there was that album that came out
because of the internet.
Yeah, because of the internet. And that's when you changed your mind on him, yeah.
Yeah, because it was just like, to this day, it's just such a fresh sound. Like, there was just nothing like it. And it was like, it gave me a blueprint. Because at that time, I was listening to a lot of Kanye, but I think I was a little too influenced by Kanye. And, you know, I was, like, secretly listening to, like, gangsta rap. I know you weren't really, you know, approving of that, which is funny too, because I feel like your generation, you guys saw hip hop really become a thing, and it was kind of like, what is this, right, for you?
Yeah, it was. It really, yeah, because you know we had never heard anything like that, you know, and then they were using all of the samples and all of that stuff, and you know, other people's music and samples and stuff, and which we did not really do back in my days. You just didn't do stuff like that, but you know, so it did become an accepted part of music culture, especially like with Kanye and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and even before him, you know, and I think that although you were really influenced a lot too by my music and a lot of the different types of styles of music that I liked, you really became even more influenced, I think, by the hip hop sound. Yeah.
Now, going from that evolution of like being influenced by all these different artists, you know, you see it with the new music, right? And I had to go into a new headspace, you know, because last year I was going through a lot. I don't know if you noticed, I was kind of silent on social media, but now I feel like for this year, I'm ready to just pop out.
Yeah, I did notice that because, you know, I follow look at a lot of your social media content. So would you say that you were less involved with social media in 2024?
Yeah, I just felt like there was a lot for me to kind of like reflect on and know where to go moving forward. I did drop some stuff, as you probably, obviously, you know. Now it's just like I'm ready. You know, it's a new year, and in the new music, I from what I've shown you, I think you could tell there's a lot of influence for me now, right? I feel like I've delved closer to our roots.
Where do you see yourself going to in 2025?
Beyond the stars, you know, and I'm excited because with all the new music coming, the new videos, and the tour, Emerald Butterfly Tour. Gotta say, man, you know, I'm just going through the process of just building even more.
I can't wait for your new music to come out. Oh,
it's gonna be dope.
Oh man, those new songs you got. Oh,
crazy, right?
Wow, I love them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I cannot wait.
So,
Absolutely.
Dad, I just want to say thank you for everything. You know, thank you for that.
I should be the one to say thank you.
Hey, you know what? It's been quite a long journey, right?
Absolutely.
But gotta enjoy the process.
Right.
So, you know.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate you, Dad.
Well, I appreciate you too.
All right. Well, there you go.
I love you. Okay.
Love you too.
All right.